My thanks to the moderator and the Cottenham churches and to the 6 candidates. I often eat out at restaurants whose management fail to provide steak knives. Consequently, I often leave home accompanied with a 2.5-inch traditional penknife, as commonly used in French restaurants. Chris Grayling, the Conservative Shadow Home Secretary, recently said on a lunchtime TV election debate that if he were in office, he would lock up immediately anyone carrying a knife. Is this not an excessive measure, particularly from a political party who at present says that we should hug hoodies and abandon the introduction of ID cards?
Okay. Yeah, we're running short of time, so I'm going to ask if we can be as brief as possible. But who likes their steak? Andrew.
Well, I mean, I confess I did not hear Chris Grayling say that thing. But I think if I had heard him, I think what he actually would have said is that, a Labour government promised that people convicted of carrying a knife, and of course there is a set of legal criteria about the circumstances in which you can or you cannot carry a knife and the nature of the knife you can carry. But the Labour government said, in fact Gordon Brown said, anybody convicted of carrying a knife should go to jail. And it simply has not happened. Only a small fraction of such people convicted have actually gone to jail. So I think actually that will have been what Chris Grayling was saying.
So,
marvellous. Well, I'm going to ask a different question. How many of you gamble? Not many. Okay. And what I want you to do now is think about gambling, because what you're going to do is, if you vote Tory or Labour, you are going to be taking a big gamble, and this is the gamble you're going to take. Their policy is that they want to cut carbon emissions by 80% by 2050, which is a laudable aim. But the Stern report shows that by 2050, if that's the trajectory we all carry on, the global temperatures will go above 2 degrees from what they are now. If that happens, negative feedback loops kick in, and we end up with a situation where we have runaway climate change. The gamble I'm asking you to take is, if that happens, the carrying capacity of this planet, and this is all Stern report, this is all scientific stuff, it's not me just trying to bring you down for an evening. This is stuff I wish I could ignore, but it's scientific stuff. They're saying the carrying capacity of the planet becomes 1, 2, possibly 3 billion if we're really, really lucky. That's half the population that's currently on this planet. So my question to you is, do you want to gamble that future for your children or your grandchildren, depending on how old you are, that in 40 years' time, only half of them will be able to live on this planet if we don't seriously consider what we're doing at this election?
sorry.
I'm fully. I realise this is going to be the last question. I've been through 2 hustings where climate change hasn't been asked as a question. I sincerely apologise, and I will come and talk to you afterwards. But it's just ridiculous that we don't talk about climate change at our hustings for a general election. It's beyond belief.
I could end another half hour.
We're aiming to finish at 9. I actually have one more question.
All right.
And one more name.
I was going to say, if there wasn't going to be a question about the green issue, you're going to have to answer the question about the knife issue instead. I think it's very important that this government has sent out a strong message about carrying knives in public, because we have had tragedies where particularly young people have ended up dead because people have been carrying knives and used them in confrontations. I don't think we should lose sight of that. I do think it's important, though, that when somebody is arrested by the police, that a certain amount of discretion is used, and that when that person goes to court, that we leave it to the judgment of the jury, if that's appropriate, or the judge to make a decision based on the evidence as to whether or not that person should be convicted. Rather than saying, that everybody should be put away in jail, I don't think that is right. I do believe in our legal system. I think we've got to do things on the basis of evidence. However, there has to be a strong message about knife crime.
Yes, I'm on Simon's side. I think you should go and use your knife on assisted suicide.
Right, well, there are different sorts of knives, are there not? And I keep a knife in my car, actually. It's a knife that I use for chopping bracket fungi off trees, and you can't do that. You can't pull it off a tree. One of my hobbies, mycology. People carry Swiss Army knives, very useful. I mean, you know, there's a difference between those sort of knives, so it's just a question of common sense. People should not be arrested when they're obviously not gang leaders and they're not fighting urban battles with knives. So there should be, you know, a certain amount of discretion and common sense used. You mentioned ID cards. ID cards are something I'm very much against. And most people don't realise they come from Europe. Europeans, in most European countries, they have ID cards. I know the Lib Dems actually are against the ID card, which surprises me. And you are as well. Yes, it's to do with the database, isn't it? And it's all to do with control of population. So, you know, I'm very much against ID cards.
Sorry, we're really short of time, so thank you.
I'll finish there. Yeah.
So, Mr. Morgan, the answer to your question is, of course, it's completely bonkers, isn't it? And, I mean, you're smiling about it, but what makes me angry about the fact that it is completely bonkers is that whilst the government is busily imposing, and perhaps the opposition is busily suggesting all of these bonkers things, there is knife crime, black on black knife crime in our inner cities. There are people going to fish and chip shops being machine gunned. And we have a very serious crime problem in some parts of the country, which needs priority action, and it needs resources put into those particular problems. It doesn't need you going off to Midsummer House being arrested for carrying a knife because you want to have a steak that night. It is absolutely bonkers, which is why, can I say, that, you know, the oscillation between the two main parties over the last 100 years now might be a good time to bring it to an end.
We really have sort of run out of time.